Hello, I'm David Marsland, and on this edition of How to Be a CEO, we're talking about what happens when your startup becomes a success. You're a hit! Now what? Making Moves launched into London's wildly competitive office renting space in 2015. Its 10th anniversary is coming up, a milestone in any company's timeline, and it's not been an easy one to get to. Office rentals in an era of home working. But then again, is that era coming to an end? I spoke to the company's CEO and founder, Tobi Crosbie. Are you still a startup?
That's a very good question. I still class this as a startup, but I don't know what the actual definition is. But I guess our mantra and our way and our culture, etc. We very much have a startup mentality.
How did it start, Tobi? What was kind of the first thing that went, do you know what? I'm going to launch a company.
Yeah, so I've been working in the industry for around 20 years, 22 years, and done a variety of jobs in the industry. Started off in corporate world, and worked with a very large property company, worldwide company. Did my training with them, and learned an awful lot about how to become a good agent, a good surveyor. But just realised there was kind of something niggling in the background to go in and maybe do my own thing or go to a smaller business to see how a smaller business works, and then spent some time with a niche agency in the West End. Really liked that type of model, but again just felt like it wasn't quite right, and there was something niggling at me that I wanted to do. And then having a chat with a few friends, a few mentors, people that I knew, said, look, Tobi, it sounds like you really should go and do your own thing. That was kind of the trigger.
Tobi, were you unemployable? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, do you know what a lot of people say to me these days? They say, how did you ever work for somebody else? So I'm sorry for like any past employers that found me difficult to work with, but I think it's definitely one of those things that if you've got that in you, it's there, and you need to get it out of you and turn it into something positive. So it was kind of it was the opportunity came. A few things happened in my life, like personally, and I was just like, do you know what, this is really the time to do it. So 9 years ago was when it all started.
But what I'm thinking is, I mean, you're entering one of the most competitive markets in London, and London is one of the most competitive property markets in the world. What did you think? Actually, there is something I can do here, despite that massive competition.
Yeah, there was actually two drivers for me. One of them was culture. So a lot of the businesses that I'd worked at before were very much around profits and driving money. And I often say, like, the culture at those places was no culture. It was more around that kind of that real business side. And my theory on it was, if you created a good place for people to come to work and that they enjoyed and they followed you and they felt like they were all part of this mission that you were going on, that would lead to actually better profits. And that's been kind of proven on the journey that we've been to date. The second was actually how I approached our work and how our clients saw us. I'm not a kind of traditional surveyor background. And I very much see us as kind of like the person surveyor. Like we really like get in with our clients. We want to be their mates. We want to be friendly with them. And we're also very occupier focused. So we very much focus on people looking for offices. So companies looking, and having that kind of mantra and that mentality actually really came out in the form of things like not wearing suits. It sounds really silly these days because no one wears suits, but at the time it was just trying to be a bit more relaxed and a bit more approachable to our clients, and that was another big thing for me when I set the business up, was to make sure that we were approachable.
With that culture, then, did that, because when you're a startup company and you've got no kind of background really, it's a bit of a risk for staff to join you, isn't it? Is that what encouraged them to do that?
So there was certain things, like even the name of the business, Making Moves, was so different to anything out in the industry. Our branding, our advertising, the videos that we produced, everything was like really, really different. And so people in the industry saw us as something a bit different and a bit more I guess like cool and trendy in the marketplace. I sound very old saying cool and trendy, but I'm going to go with those words. And I think we were a bit different. And there are people in our industry that want to go and work for something different, and saw what I was trying to do, and that's why they came in and joined us. So it was challenging, but I think once they got under the skin of the business and they saw what we were trying to do, it was actually an easy sell to them.
Yeah, obviously challenging getting staff, but obviously getting clients as well. Was that hard? Did you have a moment where you went, actually, I don't know whether this was a good idea or not?
The approach actually made us stand out, because we became very different to a lot of what our competitors were doing. So actually being very different name, different approach, different way that we looked, different the way that we pitched for work, it actually made us really stand out. So actually winning the work was not that hard. Being honest, it was actually quite an easy selling into companies. But as ever with a startup, you're sat there on your own. You've got no clients. You've got to start chasing the down. There are those days where you are very, very nervous about, have I done the right thing here? What am I doing? But generally, it was a good journey, and it was. I always really felt that there was a gap for us in the market, and that's been proven.
Was it your own money that you put in, Toby? Did you have investors? How did you get the funding all set up?
No, I actually sold a flat. Sold a flat to raise the money to allow me to start the business, and the rest of it was literally just me on my own. There was no investment, no funds raised. It was literally just me with the sale of my flat, and off I went, really.
You weren't living in that flat, were you, Toby?
I was. I moved in. I actually had to move into rented accommodation. I had to cut back on everything. But they're the sacrifices you've got to make if you want to do it. You've got to make those sacrifices. I was willing to do that because I knew long term it was going to pay off.
Yeah, but that's that you literally sold your home. That's a huge decision to have to make. I mean, were you certain this is going to work? And did everybody go, this is a great idea, to go ahead, sell your property?
Yeah, I think when you go through things like that, and it kind of gives people belief that you believe in what you're doing, and that they know that you're going to do it. Look, I'm a pretty straightforward guy, and also pretty level-headed. So people know that if I'm making a decision in my life, I'm doing it because I fully believe it, and I feel like I could achieve it. There was a few questions like, are you doing the right thing? But generally, there was a feeling of, Toby's got this. He knows what he's doing. Obviously, my parents were a bit like, okay, you're leaving a really solid job, you're going into something of the unknown. But again, there was belief there.
And was there a moment when you went, this was the right decision? Is there a time when you look back, maybe a big deal, or maybe even just a small moment, you went, yeah, I've got this right?
I think, it was a deal. Actually, we did a very large transaction with a fashion business in the Shard, trophy building, trophy client, and that was really kind of like the accelerator to go, okay, I've done really well here. I'm gonna take the money that we earned from that transaction, and we're going to reinvest that into the business, and we're really going to go for it now. And that was like a real confidence booster for me. But it was also like a real chance to actually go, right, we can really accelerate and grow this business now.
Yeah. Is that at the point when you stopped being a startup?
No, definitely not. I think we were about 6 or 7 people when that transaction happened. And then the growth came from there. So we basically doubled every year from that point right up until the wonderful years of COVID. But that was kind of that was the game plan, and it was. I think that was like the midst of startup at that point. That was kind of like when we were going through startup, scale up, but we were really accelerating our growth, accelerating our revenues, and it was a really enjoyable time to feel that energy as a startup at that point in our journey.
Okay, let's go to the ads. Please do rate and review How to Be a CEO, and hit your follow button so you never miss an episode. So I was going to talk about that pandemic, 2019. You're like 4-5 years into your company, and then your entire market changes, doesn't it? Suddenly everyone's not working in offices, they're all working from home. How do you respond to a fundamental and immediate change in what you have to do?
Yeah, so it was a really tricky time. We to the end of 2019 was actually our best year on record at that point. We went into 2020 with loads of positivity, really kicked off the year, and then slowly this messaging was getting more serious, more serious. And I remember sitting down with the team and saying, only off what I was told by the government, but we'll be back in work in 4 weeks' time. We just need a bit of time just to let this blow over.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then within 4 weeks of that, we're sending everyone home. We'd lost 90% of our pipeline. So all of our work had disappeared. And at that point, I was, sat there very concerned about what the future of Making Moves was as a business. And we basically had the decision on furlough, which was really useful for our business. We used furlough, and that helped us to get through that first kind of nine to 12 months of pain. And then the other things we had to do was pivot. We had to change our business plan very, very quickly. And the two things we started to do was advise people or companies on renewing their leases short term with landlords. So the theory was that look, you can't use your office. We're going to try and secure you some more rent free or a rental holiday for an extended period of time to try and help them through the tough time, because it wasn't just us going through a bad time, our clients were as well. And then the other thing we did, there was clients that said we're never going back to the office. So we pivoted into a disposal arm, which was to try and help those companies dispose of their offices. And slowly, as the demand started to pick up, those offices actually started to be let. So it's actually become a solid part of our business going forward now, is that disposal arm. So what was we need to do something, what are we going to do? All the directors getting together and coming up with this idea has actually turned into an actually very profitable revenue stream for us going forward.
Of those clients that told you they're never going back to the office, did any of them go back to the office?
Yeah, so 2020 was definitely a never going back. 2021 was we might come back in some way, shape or form. 22 was we're probably going to need about 50% less space than we want. And then 23 was I think we're going to come back now, but it's only going to be for 3 days a week. So things have dramatically changed this year. I mean, obviously, we're kind of in a technical recession. People have maybe just pulled back a little bit on their office requirements at the beginning of the year. But generally, the trend now appears to be we want to be back in some way, shape or form. And also, we're going to be in kind of three to 5 days a week. That seems to be a trend that's appeared. So in answer to your question, originally, yes, they weren't going to be coming back in. We were really concerned. But as this kind of like 3 to 4 year period is extended, it's actually become that they are coming back, albeit for less days a week.
Do you think that's stabilized now? Do you think the picture we have now, where lots of people are doing hybrid work going in 2 or 3 days a week, is that going to continue in the long term, or are you seeing increasing numbers of people coming in, or even increasing numbers of people going back home?
Yeah, so I personally think we've about leveled out. I think 3 days a week is where it is. The interesting thing was in 2018 and 2019, we were actually seeing the trend of people working from home 1 to 2 days a week anyway. It was actually quite the norm with the majority of businesses that we were talking to. What we've now seen is that COVID has been a catalyst for people to go, actually, we can probably work from home a bit more. We're comfortable with this. And it seems like that 3 days a week is where everyone's settling on. I do know businesses that are fully remote and it works really well for them. And I can understand why they work remote. But generally, just having 3 days in to communicate, collaborate, it feels like that's what people want to do. Where we've seen issues is where people are not giving direction to their teams about what they want. And then the teams are getting frustrated because they don't really understand. If you sit there and say to your team, we have to have you in for 3 days a week because we want you to collaborate, we need to communicate, we need to get through these tough times, then staff are happy to do that in general. They just want the direction. They want to know what the plan is. And where people haven't done that is where they're struggling a bit with that back to work policy.
Tobi, let's get some advice from you for some of the people who are listening to this who have maybe about to start up their own business or they've just started it up. What advice would you give to them about office space? That's your thing. What would you do?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said this: don't take too much on too early. So stay flexible in your lease commitments. Make sure if you are going into a lease commitment that you know exactly what you're signing up for, and that you're very, very clear on how you can exit that, particularly if you're a growing business, because you don't want to be tied into something too long that's going to outgrow you're going to outgrow very, very quickly. And also, just at the moment, there are some great deals, there are some great terms to be offered by landlords that, you know, they're trying to attract all these people back to offices. And therefore, you know, don't always go on the quoted price. Make sure that you're negotiating hard.
Do you remember going into your first office? I bet that was a moment for you.
Yeah, it was actually. I was actually in a co-working space on Shoreditch High Street, and I still to this day we had rows of 6 people, and we would all sit there, and we were all from different businesses, so it was literally 1 or 2 person companies, and it was such a great place to be, because you would actually work through problems even though those people knew very little about your business. You were able to go for a drink with them after work and talk about the problems that you'd had, or, you know, setting up your business at company's house, all these things that you need to do as a founder or CEO going in those early days, and they were there to help, and it almost felt like you were part of a business, but you were all doing your own thing. So I really remember those days. It was really good fun, but also just having people around you like that are in a similar place was really useful.
I get. Is it a bit like when you get a new flat?
Yeah, I think it is. I think when I mean, my co-working was my first office, but when we actually moved to our own first individual office, where you've got your logo on the signage downstairs, and you introduce your team, and you've got your own coffee machine, and you've got all your own bits. It's a great feeling. And I remember it was actually on our second office, walking in the morning, and there was no one in there, you know, and there was kind of 15 desks all empty, and I just happened to come in early, and you kind of go, wow, you know, this is my space, this is what I've created, and it's kind of it is a really good feeling. And we often hear that from, you know, CEOs that we work with, is, you know, not only the feeling it gives them, but also the upturn in activity and the positive motivation that it gives their staff when they move to those new offices. So it's always nice to hear those stories.
So coming into your 10th year, is that first decade going to be, will it end with something big for you? What have you guys got planned? Surely there's at least a party.
There's 100% going to be a party. I think we're already starting to talk about what's going to happen. So I may even have to do a speech at this one. We normally do a party every couple of years, but we as a business have always done nice trips away if we hit targets, and we're keen to kind of make sure that this year's trip is especially a good one.
Take them all to Disney World, Tobi. That's make sure you do that. But for the company itself, are there any big moves? Are you making moves yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, our key at the moment in terms of the business strategy is we're trying to maximize profits. That's our key goal. And how we're doing that is we've implemented, you may know, the marginal gains model with Mr. Dave Brailsford, and we've actually kind of presented that to the team as what we're trying to achieve in the next couple of years. And how we're doing that is looking at ways to increase revenue, minimize costs to maximize profit, and the ways that we've done that is improving processes, trying to work much closely with our existing client base, and also just being very clever with the way that we're using our sales team and also our digital media. And that has been, we've kind of started that this year, and that's our plan for the next 2 years. The reason to do that is to create more cash for the business. And then hopefully in about 2026, we're hoping to go through another growth spurt and actually look into some different markets for us to explore. So we have a plan. That's the main thing.
That was Tobi Crosbie from Making Moves. Get more interviews, news and analysis from the Evening Standard's business team at standard.co.uk/business. How to be a CEO will be back in 2 weeks. We'll see you then.